in the top right side, no longer representing TL, but now representing the Shopify Rebellion for the first time in a DreamHack event. It is the Dutch captain, Harstem.
In the bottom left, currently teamless, he is going to be the blue Protoss SKillous. I don't think he'll be teamless for long.
No, he shouldn't be. I actually had a little interview with him on Monday night after he won the weekly, and I was like, SKillous, is there anything happening behind the scenes? Is there something that you can tell us? Should we get excited over something? And he was smiling a little more than I feel like normally people would smile, but he said no, nothing to announce. And I was like, okay, so hopefully at least there is something in the works. I can definitely think of a team or two I would absolutely love to see SKillous on.
Yeah, I'm smiling too, Roddy. I might know something, I might not know something. Who knows?
Are you actually starting to grub lubba dub dub and you're putting him on the payroll? Oh my god, Zombie Grub, that's so cool!
Official grub dub dub payment is $50 a month. You're welcome.
I'll join, actually. I'm teamless, Zombie Grub.
How do you not pay yourself from Team Roddy?
Because Goblin takes all my money.
Well, as long as he shows good games, right? Harstem going for what looks to be a very legitimate proxy. By the way, I have to get used to casting with the new mini map thing. I noticed it yesterday, and I said, "Oh, that's really cool. They added it." But I gotta say, I haven't really cast it, and it's kind of freaking me out. Brood War has it. The times that I've cast Brood War, but watching the players spam around the map, it's quite intriguing.
I've had it before, and yesterday it did throw me off a little bit as well. I was like, this is not the first time, but for some reason it is indeed very distracting, and I kept looking at it too. But yeah, you get used to it, and I definitely think it's a neat little future. So the first real strategy in this game is, of course, that Harstem has built the second pylon outside of his main and has built a Stargate. SKillous wasn't born last night. He knew something was missing, and he's already looking around for proxies, and he's going to find it. And I want to say an absolutely perfect moment. It's kind of too late for Harstem now to just cancel it and pretend that he didn't make this investment, but it's also frustrating when it gets scouted this early.
It's going to be a lot of preparation, a lot of units in the right position, and frankly, just a shield battery. Usually does the trick. A robo comes down for SKillous as he prepares to tackle some of these adepts that are making their way across the map. And, I mean, just as long as he walls, right? Stalkers coming out after that Stalker Sentry opener, which usually would be very macro-focused, but might have a change-up with the robo. You'd see him actually being aggressive.
Yeah, I have the feeling that he's going to go 3-gate Robo, because normally you wouldn't answer a Stargate with like, wow, I'm going to go Robo, because that's actually something that's very good for the Stargate player if we are just playing a very normal macro-oriented game. We know that's not the case. SKillous actually moved out with units. Now the Adepts come in too. I'm very surprised by the movement here. This is going to hurt, man. I think we're easily going to lose 6 or 7 probes here, if not a whole lot more.
Yeah, this was a huge mistake. I mean, it already sucked that the shield battery wasn't quite done, to at least help with the Oracle, but yeah, the Adepts getting in was going to guarantee a couple of probes, and you're pretty spot on. 7 probes go down. The combination, the Oracle couldn't really be focus fired either, so it didn't take any damage, much less hull damage. The only thing that SKillous is going for him is the idea that he can attack, right? Which can still mean a whole lot. Harstem, though, able to get scouting with that attack, knows what's up, is going to start his defenses on the high ground.
Yeah, I think it's pretty smart. It's very uncomfortable for Harstem, obviously, to cancel a Nexus that was that far along. But why lose the game when you know that in a one base against one base scenario, you're actually ahead? And he still has 1 Oracle out on the map that could very well drop a Stasis. And I assume that that is what we're going to go for. SKillous warps in a Stalker. And Harstem wasn't quick enough. Might still be able to get it off. Yep, still gets a little Stasis off. And 4 probes get stuck as well. Definitely not the cleanest start here for SKillous.
No, actually, quite unclean. He's probably not feeling too good. And the fact that this game might end, you know, shortly, 5-6 minutes. So, I mean, we'll see. PvP can be kind of weird, one base to one base. Probably won't put him in a great headspace. I think, if anything, you'd want to extend the game just to kind of get, you know, I'm sure he's warmed up, but get those nerves out of the way, because I think that's 100% what it is. But SKillous, now on the offensive, might be feeling a little more in control of the situation, trying to bust up this high ground. His micro's working out so far, but Big Daddy Immortal and a shield battery, that's always hard to break.
Yeah, if I'm SKillous now, I just start chipping away at that gateway, contain my opponent a little bit, and just take the game from there. You know you lost a lot of probes, but on the other end, you did kill a pylon that was out on the map. Now you kill the battery defensively, you take out the gateway. So there isn't that big of an advantage for Harstem. Sure, Harstem has more probes, but what are we going to do with all those probes in a one-base scenario? Especially probe number 21 and 22, they really don't add anything.
That's a very good point. And that's why I said that one base to one base can get really weird. Usually in other non-mirror matchups, especially non-PvPs, there's a lot of benefit to being the aggressor and getting that contain, putting them on one base. And there's benefit here too, of course, if you get a faster Nexus. But usually the sway between two Protoss players who have, equal ability to get that Warp Prism, both of them have Robos, it creates quite a dynamic. It creates quite a weird dynamic. Anyone can come back from this position. Harstem is going to expand, maybe. I mean, he did get the Warp Prism. Maybe he's going to put everything into an attack. And SKillous is, of course, expanding. Yeah, but just because they both expand doesn't mean that the aggression necessarily stops. One of them could try and get out on the map and do some damage. Always aware that their opponent could do similar things, but hoping that they'll get the benefit of it.
Well, it's kind of cool if our observer, who is Njal, just like all the previous seasons, could take a look at the income advantage real quick. Of course, Harstem took a big lead when he was killing probes, but even afterwards, when SKillous was fully saturated on one base, you can see that up to 20 probes, you actually do still mine a little bit more. It's not a whole lot, but it's still 150 to 200 resources a minute advantage that you're getting from those extra probes. A lot of people think 16 is it, anything over that is bad, but Harstem still gets a little lead. It starts dropping up. And especially like past 20, then there is a very, very, very little gain you get out of having any probes.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, I mean, it's turning into a little bit of an army supply lead, but it feels very temporary with shield batteries coming down. Shield batteries are plenty, by the way, and one already in the main. It doesn't feel like Harstem's going to be able to bust SKillous, but at this point, getting a couple of stalkers, getting a couple of probes would be the best thing.
Oh,
and
careful the prism,
get
though.
Out of there.
Yeah,
4 seconds to blink. Blink is done, but the Warp Prism is going to escape. That was cutting it close.
That is ridiculous, Zach. And no matter how good Harstem is, that is not something that he could have possibly known when Blink would finish up there. It was seconds away, and if he would have just gone half a second deeper, now the Oracle does die. It's a little bit slow because the Oracle still represents a little bit of a threat, and it's a shame to give it away that easily. Now, Harstem definitely dodging a bullet there, because if he loses that prism with 2 Immortals inside of it, then I actually think it's just game over. SKillous will run to the other side of the map and end it.
That would have been really scary. SKillous is going to try and do some damage, knowing that he has that blink much faster. And of course, his Warp Prism's still alive. So he could go for the throat, try and actually kill Harstem, especially if there's no shield battery, which he's seeing with this little observer. The shield battery's not quite done, not going to hit that timing though. Or he could transfer over into his own aggression. Until Blink is done, that Warp Prism harassment can be really nasty. But that is also finishing up for Harstem. We got ourselves a block on the main ramp, so the Warp Prism micro is going to have to be equally good here for Harstem. He's already elevating a lot of units, but of course, while this is going on, you pointed it out, SKillous losing probes back at home.
Yep. I'm actually surprised that the probe count is still this close, because he was already 6 or 7 workers behind earlier. Now he loses 6 again. Like, SKillous has lost 14 workers in this game. Harstem only 1. Yet SKillous is only looking at a 4-worker deficit, and he's still the player with Blink, while Harstem sure has the more powerful army, but it's also the clumsier army. And especially when you have nothing to break force fields, Blink Stalkers and force fields can be really freaking good. Kind of love to see SKillous go for that battery. Nice blink there by Harstem though, as he does create a slightly better angle for himself, ends up losing the prism. I do think that SKillous should probably disengage. No, this is not a good fight to take anymore, SKillous. Love that very decisive move to blink forward there and go for the prism. It wasn't going that bad at first for SKillous, but he completely overstayed his welcome there, and Harstem takes the 1-0 lead.
Absolutely overstayed his welcome. Had he blinked back 5 seconds sooner when you were kind of calling for it, as well as unsiege his Warp Prism perhaps, and gotten away with, I don't know, 10 Stalkers and the Warp Prism as well. I mean, I think we're talking about a game that's still going. It's still not really great for SKillous, who has been down in economy the entire time, who had, I mean, nothing really else going for him. They both started +1 at the same time, but Harstem still had his 2 Immortals. I don't know, but the game can still go on, right? PvP, it's a beautiful matchup in my eyes, because sometimes it doesn't make any sense, and sometimes when someone's really hardcore winning, they don't actually kind of tie up the game in a nice little bow. It gets too messy. But with that type of dedication, SKillous, he kind of put his head on the chopping block. Harstem was more than happy to chop it off.
Yeah, it was actually still pretty close. Army-wise, somewhat even. Of course, 2 Immortals are very powerful, but we saw how good of a job the sentries did at first. And it's not that if Harstem, let's say, has 2 Immortals, but the rest of the army is even, or he's even down in sentries and down 1 Stalker, you can't just run into the natural of Skillous and end the game, because batteries are way too freaking good. You have to make up your mind. Either you kill the battery, and that's obviously a lot of firepower going into it, or you ignore it, and then you can't do anything. So if Skillous would have just disengaged 5 or 6 seconds quicker, I'd say kill that Prism, and then he should have just backed off. It's still a very playable game. Not loving it, like you said, but definitely playable. Instead, the man finds himself down 0-1. He probably looks at that game as everything was a disaster, which, yeah, it kind of was. Yet, he made it somewhat close, and I think that this really goes to show how good this young man has become. He is down 0-1, playing these games from Utrecht, the Netherlands, the Team Liquid headquarters, basically the old home of his opponent. This is SKillous.
And in the bottom right, repping that Shopify Rebellion, he is Harstem in the Netherlands, just not at the Team Liquid.
I think in Den Haag, if I know that correctly. Does it ring any bells to you, Zombie Grub?
Absolutely not.
I think in English it's like The Hague.
Oh, still no.
Okay. It is one of the 4 or 5 biggest cities we have in the Netherlands, I think. Top 4, top 5.
Roddy, you have to understand, as an American, for my first 20 years of life, I thought the Netherlands and the Dutch specifically was another word for German. Okay, Dutch, Deutsch, same thing.
A lot of people think we're Danish as well, so that's also. So you're Danish? I'm like, no. What do they speak in Denmark? Do they speak Dutch? I'm like, no, absolutely not. Not even close.
Thankfully, esports has widened my horizons and made me a more educated, worldly person. So I sound somewhat smart, but I definitely don't know any cities in the Netherlands. When I go there, and I will go there,
you know 1 or 2.
I know 2. Yeah. Okay. I know 2. You're right. When I go there, I will learn about all the cities. It'll be great. Be a little, I don't know, educational trip. They got another proxy, like legitimate proxy. Harstem's probe's still around, so proxy oracle worked out once, and try it again.
Gateway, I think, is good on this map. I think just 3-gate. Oh, he goes for a robo. Okay. So Harstem made us go for the 3-gate robo here off 1 base, and he opens up with a depth. That's actually interesting, because most of the time when people go 3-gate robo of 1 base, they don't open up with adapts. And if you're the defender here in Skillous' shoes and you see 2 adapts, I think of a lot of stuff, but I don't normally think of 3-gate robo. Something that Harstem did though against Neep, and that was very cool, is where he proxied the robo, and then he just makes a war prism, and he uses the prism to drop the adepts in the main base, finds a lot of economic damage, and just plays a macro game from there on out. I actually thought it was a super cool and smart play. Let's see if he goes for something like that, or if it's the traditional all-out 1-base aggression.
Right, so those are the 2 choices that we're looking at. As I was saying last game, until Blink is done, I know there's a target on the way, but hold on the thought. Until Blink is done, that War Prism actually has a lot of power. But if Blink is done, then that's, the problem. We saw that last game. And then if you get a Stargate, like SKillous is getting, then that can also be a problem. Kind of twofold for a proxy roboer. Yeah, that makes sense. If you want to go for that War Prism harassment, you got to be careful. Void Rays bop it pretty darn quickly. And if it's just like a light harassment like you're talking about, maybe a Phoenix is pretty worthwhile, right? And then if it's actually dedicated, again, the Void Rays can still be really good on the defensive, although it's a little trickier nowadays, now that they take a little longer to build and are costly. But SKillous has already figured out everything that's going on.
Yeah, but it's bad though. I feel like he kind of figured it out too late, because the batteries are not quite done yet. There is a Big Daddy Immortal here. I don't think those shield batteries are going to go up. I'm afraid for SKillous, and he's going to have to give up on the low ground here, because Harstem is here about as quick. I feel like Harstem should have gone, by the way. I don't know why we're so afraid of 4 Stalkers. He is giving time for that battery to finish up, and then that Void Ray will be out too. Like 4 Stalkers stand no chance against 1 Immortal, 2 Stalkers, and 2 Adepts. Surprised Harstem gave him that much time there.
That's a very good point. I think absolutely could have targeted that shield battery with very little repercussion. And now the War Prism's going to get targeted by the Void Ray, like I was talking about. This could take it out so damn quickly. SKillous knows he can commit, so there goes the Prismatic Alignment. And we have that Harstem Immortal getting taken down. SKillous, the Stalker, barely lives. That was not the attack you're looking for when you go for the proxy robo. Gotta tell you.
Very smart target fight there by SKillous to go for the Stalker that was almost getting away first. The Void Ray is able to leash onto it, and then he knew he was going to be able to get the second one too. Those are some slow warp-ins, and I don't think that those two Stalkers would necessarily be strong enough to fight that Void Ray, but I guess SKillous didn't want to fight until he would have Prismatic Alignment. Pokes the barrier there. Harstem has a Robo Bay as a follow-up, and that's something that people often do to make like 1 or 2 Disruptors, and then they try their luck again. But Harstem needs to worry about the amount of anti-air he has, man. He cannot fight these two Void Rays. This could very well just be straight up game over for some people. I think this is it.
Yeah. I mean, 2 short games, as I do believe this is going to be game over. Okay, that one Void Ray barely survives with a cancel in this Prismatic Alignment. Yeah, it's definitely too much damage. Harstem's follow-up of Disruptors works quite well when we're talking about a ground-based defense that's all clumped up in their own natural, but isn't going to work out against Kai'Sa's 2 Void Rays. GG. Yeah, but 2 short games. That first one was a little more dynamic, a lot more back and forth. Second game, with that first attack, it was already writing on the wall. Harstem's not going to be too happy with that very sudden swing of momentum.
If Harstem would be able to resume this game from replay and he just clicks the 2 Stalkers, the 2 Adepts, and the Immortal into the natural, he has like 10 seconds until that Void Ray is out. He kills that shield battery, then he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. Obviously, he wins the fight against the 4 Stalkers, and then the moment that that Void Ray would show up, you warp in 3 more Stalkers, and it's actually game over for Harstem. That's it. Like, there is absolutely nothing that SKillous would have been able to do there. Maybe stabilize on 1 base with sentries, but he'd be so damn far behind. Harstem will definitely be kicking himself a little bit for that one. If he would have just tried. I understand you don't want to give away a unit, you don't want to run into batteries, but if he would have just poked and he saw, oh, that's it? My army is not just a bit better, but my army is way better than yours. Take out that battery. It's actually game over.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It was all about those couple extra seconds that he took, hesitation, figuring that waiting for the Warp Prism is going to be better than going now. And in some cases, that is true, just not that case. Could have certainly maybe poked and prodded a bit more to get that intel. But that's, as I said, 2 quick PvPs. Going into third game, it's going to be on Glittering Ashes, which you think would mean it could go faster, rather longer. But yeah, it could actually go faster. PvP, especially with the way these guys are playing it, I guess started by Harstem's Proxy Pylons. They're in it to win it quickly, apparently.
Let's see if that will continue, or if we are going to get one of those beautiful macro-oriented games that I've seen plenty of on this map from this man in particular. Some of the games that he's had against Max Packs in the last 12 months have been my favorite games of the year. In the bottom left side, the Dutchman representing the Shopify Rebellion. It is Harstem.
In the top right, as the blue Protoss, he is SKillous.
SKillous had to be very nervous there on Berlingrad. By the time that his probe made it into the natural, makes it into the main base, and he's like, okay, you're not expanding, you don't have anything in your main. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm being attacked on 1 base, and you've already kind of committed to the pylon, to the Nexus, and you're like, well, I'm just going to do my best, and then you just get an absolute freebie. Killed the Prism immediately, did a great job targeting the Stalkers afterwards with that 1 Void Ray, and that's definitely not how that strategy was supposed to work out for Harstem. And I think Harstem will definitely be kicking himself a little bit for just missing a massive opportunity there on a amazing 2-0 start in this group.
Right. Yeah, that would have been nicely, I guess, all done and dusted if it had worked out. Kind of the idea worked out, because the execution did not work out nearly as much. I also love the idea as playing off that first game too. I mean, that's what was kind of smart about the beginning, is that Harstem opened up in very similar ways, right? Had that proxy, which SKillous would know of as he scouted the main. Then the 2 Adepts too, which, as you were saying, doesn't really usually lead into Proxy Robo, but rather Proxy Stargate. So kind of playing off that first game, maybe you get SKillous to doubt himself an extra 3 or 4 seconds. That Void Rays later, maybe an Oracle pops out first, or rather starts first, then he has to cancel. I mean, that's the type of thing that can really change such a fast attack and actually make it work as well. But Harstem's delay, self-caused, is, well, maybe what cost him that game. No proxy this time, so they are playing Glittering Ashes as macro map. Maybe one of them will throw down a faster, like, Stargate in 1 base, but yeah, it looks like both setting up for Nexus.
Maybe Harstem is going to do some... Whoa! No! What? Oh! Harstem misclick kills his own probe. You can see his face as well, super confused there. I think he's smiling a little bit about it. I was like, what is happening? Why are two red probes fighting each other? You can see that even the most experienced players definitely feel the pressure when they play in this event.
Yeah, absolutely.
SKillous laughing.
yeah, that is funny. That doesn't. Well, 2 probes right off the bat. Way to go, SKillous. Who is going to try and find these adepts again early on to get some damage, and is very effective in doing so. The first game he was able to find them, but only with 1 stalker because he was looking around for that proxy pylon. This time around, both stalkers dealing a tremendous amount of damage. 2 more stalkers pop out behind it. Harstem actually would really love to save this adept, not just because of the natural benefit of having 2 adepts, 1-shot probes, but he's getting more. Like his plan is to go ahead and throw adepts at SKillous, so you want to keep the first ones alive.
Yeah, it's funny. I had an entire speech about this yesterday when somebody opened up with 2 adepts. I was like, man, I've seen that. Like, obviously, every now and then they go up to 6 or even 8 adepts, and you can do some really cool stuff, shade on top of sentries, or just bust open a battery. And then obviously it didn't happen. It was just 2 adepts into a bunch of stalkers. This time around, Harstem is going to do it, but since 2 adepts are on the other side of the map, he's actually going to struggle a little bit fighting these stalkers. The micro is very good, of course, on the side of SKillous, and as long as there is no battery, you're gonna have a pretty tough time here. So now Harstem is forced to warp in stalkers. Now already losing 2 adepts. Should be able to get at least 1 stalker kill, but he's gonna lose a stalker too, right?
Yes, you're right about that. At the end of the day, I mean, I feel like this messes up Harstem's plan a lot more. Like, it actually does mess up his plan more. His plan was to get adepts, run across the map, hopefully find SKillous, maybe 2 stalker opener, but then maybe into sentries, hell, even being a little bit greedy. This is awesome. Warcraft 3 micro being shown right now to get that last stalker kill. Is he gonna get it? No, JK.
He could have shaded with 1 adept maybe, and then let the shade finish up and just get 1 more tap on that 1 stalker. Harstem was a Warcraft 3 player, by the way. He was nowhere near as tall back then. He was very tiny. It's hard to imagine, I know, but he was actually a very tiny young man, but he just played quite a bit of Warcraft. I think we even met in 1 or 2 national qualifiers, as Harstem does get that little stalk kill there. Now we should be able to get maybe good force field by SKillous.
Yeah, beautiful force field. Honestly, this has been a very fun opener, that's for sure. The back and forth, the little micro tricks, that is awesome. But as I was saying, Harstem's plan gets a little interrupted. Is that the end of the world? No, it isn't. But there's kind of a big thing happening, which is Blink. It is not going to be around for a very long time. He opted to go for that Robo. Opens up with that. It's going to be a very defensive kind of structure, so he's going to be okay on 2 bases. But then that Blink, we know this from the last few years of PvP. Blink is kind of king, unless you have a particular timing in mind. And SKillous is going to be able to play around, basically, just blink around, take faster third nexus if you wanted to, blink into the main base, just be a real hassle.
I mean, Harstem is queuing up a Prism now, and I wonder if he's going to skip out on Blink completely and if he just wants to go for a charge. That is a popular build from a while ago. A lot of stalkers blinking into the main base here, though. SKillous is going to grab a couple of worker kills and wants to unpower the Robo, and he does unpower the Robo. Force field goes down. Hey, those stalkers are kind of stuck now. Is he really going to blink into the main base with more? No, because you can't fight those immortals. Okay, this actually didn't work out all that fantastic for SKillous, I think.
Agreed. A couple of force fields really messing up the exit right there was quite good. And I think you're totally right about that charge starting up. It's not starting for Harstem, though. It is starting for SKillous. I think SKillous might be picking up what Harstem is putting down, which is to be aggressive. I said it meant maybe a timing. I think the charge doesn't start up, so maybe Harstem's changing his mind, but then he has on gateways. I don't know. The longer the game goes.
It has to be charged, though, right? Like, I feel like Harstem is too far behind to just try to make a couple of Blink stalkers from here on out. As we do have 2 more adapts shading into the natural, so that's actually a very sweet move there for Harstem, and is going to be able to just make his life on his side of the map a little bit easier as well. Okay, now we do have Blink on the way for Harstem. It's just very late Blink, and now he will just go up to 3 bases. Maybe happy with that probe damage he just dealt. I do want to say as well, I think if SKillous blinks into the main base like that, I actually think it's worse to blink with 6 stalkers than it is with 4. 4 is just a magical number to one-shot workers, and trying to go for pylons and stuff with more stalkers is like, okay, you're going to do a little bit better against buildings, but it's going to be harder to evacuate. It's going to get clumsy if indeed force fields go down or you're forced to blink elsewhere in the main base. I'm surprised that he went with 6 or 7 there. I think just running in 4, killing 5 workers, and recalling the probes would have been a better play.
Perhaps, yeah. I guess I mean, your eyes get kind of wide when you see that they're a little out of position, and then you see a pylon powering what is usually an important robo. I mean, I can understand why you start to think you can do it, but he did get punished. And the question is, was the punishment enough? That plus the adepts, and it doesn't feel like it is. I mean, he's still up in probes because his third base was so much faster, and he has his own charge, which Harstem never started, right? So Blink might be finishing for Harstem, and he does have 3 immortals, but SKillous has built up a pretty feisty army himself with 3 shield batteries protecting his third. So even if he's slightly out of position, it's not like 3 shield batteries are going to go down that quickly to Harstem's army. And wow. Yeah, SKillous really doubling down on the defense. Hopefully he cancels those, because Harstem, I don't know if they're really going to be dedicating.
No recall yet on this Nexus, I believe. Actually, there is a recall, but he's just going to deal with it by warping in a couple of Stalkers. But it all takes a little while, and that means that Harstem will be ending up losing 4, 5, maybe even 6 if the target fire is good.
7?
It is 6 probes. Yeah, if he would have cancelled. Can we get one there? Nope. Wrong neighborhood. Well, yeah, still a very good move by SKillous.
And he did cancel all those additional structures. So it made a lot of sense for him to double down on the defense, knowing that he had what was, I mean, not the biggest economic lead, but an economic lead, and most importantly, that Blink lead, charge lead. So he was like, okay, I just need to survive. He was right about that. I just was so worried that he was going to over-defend, as that would give Harstem plenty of time to get into disruptors. As it is now, 1 disruptor, very playable for SKillous. When you get to 3, 4 disruptors, then it gets incredibly difficult to break a Protoss. This is a nice find from Harstem, an immortal, a sentry going down, and SKillous, he was the one that was supposed to be the bully. He gets bullied.
Yep, well done there by Harstem, utilizing that high ground vision that he had, and he was decisive, didn't second guess, just blinked forward, picked up an immortal. And if SKillous wanted to be aggressive, well, he's gonna have to change his mind now, because he was already down in the immortal count, then losing your immortal, losing 2 out of 3 sentries as well. Yep, and that's going to force you to retreat. So now he's going to have to play the catch-up game, because now it's just going to turn into Disruptors. And as impressive as I think SKillous has been over the last few months, I don't know if Disruptor Wars is something that he truly excels at in PvP. Well, I actually think Harstem is one of the very best. Like maybe Showtime max packs, but Harstem is right up there when it comes to European Disruptor Wars. And I kind of feel that SKillous, his strengths lay elsewhere.
I think I agree, mostly because when SKillous was, again, I think in 2020, kind of rising in our eyes, who's the next best Protoss kind of a question, then it was the counterculture almost, where like everyone was going disruptors even pretty quickly, and he was the one going up to like 7, 8 bases trying to just overwhelm. And I thought he was really good with that style, but then things kind of shifted again in PvP, and this is more of a, I guess, a classic example, maybe a bit faster the disruptors as Harstem wanted to get that advantage. But yeah, SKillous, I think he still would be better in all the multitasking of just pure units, where that disruptor it just makes a different dynamic at the end of the day. So let's see if SKillous is improved on that. He is getting his own disruptors. He does have faster +2, which still does matter, even though disruptors like one-shot almost everything. And he does still have that better economy. So it's not much, but it has been peaking every now and again.
Yeah, +2 really helps if you have a couple of Stalkers, you want to blink them forward and get in range of a Disruptor and just pick those off, right? Like we all know the close calls in TVP where Terran players team forward and want to pick off a Disruptor. In PvP, those scenarios definitely present itself as well. Harstem goes for War Prism speed. And while I'm watching this game, and I feel like we finally get that long, nice macro PvP between these two that we were hoping for, I really wonder when we're going to get Observer speed, because that is like my little thing that I'm obsessed with. I can't talk about air upgrades anymore because Lambo has been bullying me too much, but Observer speed I actually think is godlike in games like this. And while I'm starting my speech, we see SKillous already firing it up, and I'm very happy to see it.
Yeah, very nice. It really is about vision when you go to the Disruptor Wars. So always blinking one Stalker ahead, or even just having a Stalker or a Zealot kind of around the places that you can't fill with Observers because your Robo is trying to pump out Disruptors. And we do have Disruptor Wars going on. Yeah, vision is paramount. So being able to even micro your Observer can be big. This blink, no! Oh my God, he thought he wasn't paying attention. He missed the Disruptor shot. I don't know what that was, but SKillous just took one to the face, and now he's currently down in army supply. But we'll run back to the high ground, perhaps, need be.
You know what also really stings about these Disruptor games is that SKillous isn't, by nature, I think, aggressive player. So he wants to fight. The problem is if you fight, yeah, Disruptor against Disruptor, it's so much easier to be the defender. And one thing that you absolutely never, ever want to do is chase an army, because then you're just eating ball after ball to the face. And we can already see SKillous there definitely getting a bit ahead of himself. He's going to lose that Disruptor too. Harstem is 100% getting the best of SKillous. That's another one. Like, what is this? 6 or 7 kills? 5-1 when it comes to Disruptors lost. Harstem playing this out in an absolutely marvelous manner so far. But one ball is all it takes.
Right, yeah, exactly. SKillous has been trading poorly, and still continues to. He's really getting quite flustered. He doesn't really know where he wants to stop Harstem's army in his tracks. Keeps on thinking, oh, I'll get reinforcing disruptors to help me in the natural, but that hasn't really worked out so far. Now forced to go on that high ground, it does at least stop the move into the main, because that would have been really deadly. But yeah, this has just not been SKillous' game so far. He's got to get a handle on things. In terms of macroing, expanding, and getting a bunch of upgrades, doing great on that, but he's even falling behind, actually, on the Stargate. So pacing-wise, Harstem, I mean, he's getting the better disruptor trades, and I think he's outpacing SKillous at this point. So SKillous needs to make a kill move. He needs to start winning, get some momentum, and go across the map, or else he's going to fall behind, suddenly be up against 6 carriers that he didn't even realize were on the way.
Nope, and that is not a place that you ever want to find yourself in. Harstem also managed to get observer speed at this point, so they're both going to have those speedy observers. And yesterday we definitely saw observers win a game or two, and that could also be the case this time around. SKillous is still in a surprisingly decent spot. They might even find that Bar Prism there with the 2 Immortals. The armies are very close to each other in the center of the map as well. As the Nova goes forward, and SKillous at least avoids the first one. Gets the 2 Immortals in the Prism, so that is nice. But yeah, the carrier clock is ticking, and that's not something that SKillous is aware of at all.
Right, that's a real problem. He's not been able to do any scouting, not that you necessarily send hallucinations this late in the game towards your opponent's main base, but he also hasn't done any harassment, which is a problem twofold, because that is a lot of the time you're scouting, and obviously it's also what SKillous was hoping to do for most of this game. He was hoping that Dark Shrine investment would eventually pay off and really start the distraction game to include with the disruptors, and there's nothing but disruptor wars. Oh my god, the blink back actually hit him!
Yep, he stayed around a bit too long. He got greedy. He saw the disruptors actually kind of crawling towards the front. One was very exposed, and he's like, I'll get the other one too, and then I will still get out. But he blinked so far back that he just blinked straight into the ball. Still maxed out, still has a decent income, of course. There is nothing lost yet, but it's got to feel like you're getting absolutely buffed so far if you're SKillous in this game, and that just never mentally feels right.
Yeah, especially when it really is just all about the attacks. Like right now, I think we can confidently say that Harstem's outplaying him, the Disruptor Wars. You start to include some aggression, some DT charge lot run bys, and we're very quick to understand and maybe even excuse. You know, like, of course, 7 DTs are killing cannons. He's going to be distracted on the front lines. But only just now do we get anything like that. Handful of DTs causing a bit of trouble, but the army was, you know, kind of close. The Zag defense will finish up. And when you have like 7 cannons and 3 shield batteries, it's really hard to break that. So it's going to come down again to more of just a battle in the middle. But Harstem's going to have carriers at any moment. Anytime he wants to start those up, he can. And if SKillous isn't really about to get some better trades, then I don't know. He's definitely gonna be behind. It seems like he's starting to, though. He seems like he's finally moving his way across the map and actually making Harstem a little scared.
Good scout in the main base with a couple of hallucinated phoenixes. It's the first time that SKillous sees it, but now he knows that 3 carriers are already out. They were hidden. I actually think it would have been a decent moment for SKillous to try to be aggressive there with the DTs from the top left and the main army from the right, because Harstem had 18 supply, or right? Yeah, 18 supply of carriers not participating in the fight at all, so there was maybe a little opportunity. Instead, SKillous is going to try his luck at the bottom, picks up another Immortal, but there are so many cannons, and sure, you can out-micro them, but it just all takes so damn long.
This is a really annoying place to break. It's also a really annoying place for Harstem to break, though. I mean, that many disruptors trying to collapse in on this can be very dangerous, even if you have a good surround, but the carriers are still a threat, right? So if they came forward, which they finally have, then SKillous would need to figure out how to deal with those, which is quite difficult if you don't have Tempest. But that is the first thing that he has gotten from his Stargates. They might just be coming out in the nick of time. Can they be protected is one of the bigger questions, though. And with his Nexus going down, he definitely sacrificed that. He's forced back onto the high ground. I mean, his Tempests, you could force this back temporarily, but Harstem, he feels like he got the jump here. You know, he's got better upgrades as well, and he still has his own mighty disruptor count that can keep SKillous at bay.
I was definitely not laughing at you. I was taking a look. I was like, all right, Mothership is on the way. 70% done. I was like, let's see if Harstem has any observers. And before this one just popped, he had 0 observers, and SKillous has 8. 8 observers against 0. So that got a little chuckle out of me. Tempest are incredibly good against carriers. That is a decent ball. We have battery overcharge there, I believe, as well. Stalkers get in range of the carriers. One of them at least goes down. It's funny how this works, but I do think that SKillous now is in a much better spot again, because Tempest are damn amazing against carriers as long as you indeed can keep them safe.
Exactly. And the real trouble a minute ago was whether SKillous could get there in time. If Harstem has moved forward as he did 45 seconds earlier, 30 seconds earlier, the Tempests are still building. He doesn't just take out that forward base, which is kind of excusable to lose. He's taken out another base. He's taken out a couple of stalkers with the disruptor balls. He's like wedged himself into a great position. But the stop, I think, was just in time. SKillous was able to actually get up his defensive Tempests, because at that point they were defensive. And now, technically, he would win that kind of rock, paper, scissors of the air, but as long as he's utilizing the range, which is the next tricky part. Can SKillous always utilize that range? And will Harstem then out-expand him if SKillous just plays defensive?
And for everyone out there that doesn't watch a whole lot of late-game PvP, you may think it's all about SkyToss now. The disruptors are still incredibly important, because if there are no disruptors, stalkers can just blink forward underneath these units, and carriers can be tough in high numbers, but in low numbers, stalkers do very well against them. And Tempest, obviously, they are made out of paper, so they go down immediately. And that's why you want to keep a couple of disruptors around, so in case your opponent does blink forward, you can land the biggest of shots and just straight up win the fight.
Right. Still very important to have those. Counting shots can still be a big deal. At this point, they have plenty of observers, each of them, and is still SKillous trailing a little bit on those upgrades, which, I mean, the upgrade dynamic here, you know, upgrades going to matter a lot more to those fast-firing units, the interceptors and the carriers, but still worth pointing out. Oh, the mothership is
recalling the
tantalizing.
army. He's recalling the army to it. That's pretty sick.
That was pretty sick. I feel like SKillous was thinking, no way that mothership's on its own, right? Like, and he had been already punished so many times earlier on for being too overly aggressive on the blink, and I think he just wasn't paying attention to his stalker army. 2 big disruptor shots obliterate half of his stalker army. Thank goodness he had a little bit of a bank to build off of, but I don't know if he can really be aggressive or taking that much damage, even though the Tempest count has grown. Chasing is such a dangerous thing to do. To your point, you know, disruptors, Harstem still has a lot of stalkers himself, but he's on the chase, man. He wants to try and get something done.
Yep, the Tempest are able to get a couple of shots off. Harstem is wondering if there's an opportunity for him to blink forward, but there are still 8 disruptors on the side of SKillous. I actually think it's good for SKillous that he lost a couple of observers. I'm a big fan of obs in PvP, but I think having 8 is maybe a little overkill, because they have a lot of workers as well, and it does make your actual army a little bit weaker. So I think losing a couple is not the end of the world.
That is a very large run-by force from Harstem in the top left. All the stalkers going up there. Looks like SKillous caught maybe the tail end of something, so he just sent a couple of his own zealots. Now realizing it was a much more dedicated force, he's going to try returning home with his own actually limited stalker force, 18 to 12 here. Harstem's not gonna push the issue. I mean, the thing is, the stalkers, they're not really what starts a base trade a lot of the time. I mean, they don't kill the buildings all that particularly quickly, so I guess just wanting to save them, hopefully find SKillous a bit more out of position, or now just collapsing in on top of them now that SKillous' stalkers are out of the equation.
Very big revelation there that SKillous landed. Harstem landed one on SKillous, but he can't really do that much with it. But if SKillous lands one, all those Tempests can go to work. Harstem did a little bit of a miscontrol there, as 2 carriers and the mothership went away from the rest of the army. SKillous, realizing how much value he got out of that one revelation there, immediately queues up 2 oracles. He wants to do that all over again. And it's quite crazy where it feels that Harstem has legitimately been playing the better game for 95% of this. But SKillous is so in it. Even if Harstem is very rich, if you lose an army like this, you don't snap rebuild that, right? You can warp in 20 stalkers and queue up a couple robo units, but you don't just immediately max out. And there is a real chance that SKillous gets an absolutely amazing fight against Harstem, and that could just be game ending.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Exactly. Harstem has been playing the better game, but it doesn't mean that SKillous isn't capable of taking a very, very good fight. Harstem going for some special tactics, perhaps. That recall on the mothership is once again available, and at the very least, could just recall to the Nexus, actually, if he needs to skedaddle. SKillous is completely out of position. Harstem knows that. I wonder if SKillous is wondering where the heck is the air army. And he's probably getting ready to recall at any second. There it shows itself. What is the plan here, SKillous? No recall. Just trying to run home. Old-fashioned, though, so...
I just tried to get a couple of Tempest shots off. Maybe he felt that if he would show the recall, then Harstem would immediately recall and he'd lose everything. Harstem is going to recall the Stalkers into the main base. That is a big move by Harstem. Does kind of feel like he's stuck right now, but we'll see how this one plays out. Zombie Grub, that's a crazy play.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I mean, he still has the Nexus recall, right? But you wouldn't be able to recall literally everything here. Mothership does go down for SKillous, but it's Tempest. They're still able to utilize their range, and there's even a shield battery that was overcharged in the low ground. Disruptor shots from Harstem just took down all of the disruptors of SKillous. Now he has Stalkers and Tempest. Can they win this battle? By the looks of things, they are going to at least push Harstem out of the main, but they were incapable of killing that Mothership. She got away. That was a crazy loss of resources. But SKillous does keep his bases alive, right? His production even got kept alive. His upgrades got kept alive. We're still in a position where SKillous could make that comeback. He's now ahead in supply, in fact, as he starts up his own carriers.
Yeah, I like that. I was about to bring that one up. He's going to go for his own carrier. I think it's pretty smart. If SKillous didn't just move command all of his disruptors deep into his own main base and lose all of them for nothing, that would have been an amazing trade. Now it was like kind of even, I guess. Yeah, Harstem lost more resources during all of this than SKillous did. But SKillous lost 6 or 7 disruptors for nothing. They didn't do anything. They didn't fire a single shot. He just ran into a choke point. Clearly was a little bit overwhelmed by that crazy play of Harstem and lost control of those important units. But this is still anybody's game because Harstem can have all the Stalkers in the world. But if SKillous has disruptors and carriers, it really doesn't matter how many disruptors you have.
Right? Harstem realizing that he had a gateway problem. I mean, actually 8 for this long of a game is quite low. So he's realizing it way too late. And, you know, now that he's trying to build his own carriers, that army is awfully close to the Stargate production. So this would be really scary to do, kind of hoping you get away with it. It looks like maybe he will. SKillous, maybe, yeah, playing maybe even too cautiously. Is wondering, like, is this really going to be this easy? Goes for kind of one of the safer bets, going to that 5th base. Still a very important, actually economical base. Takes out the stack defense as well, and is going to be able to guard against Harstem's army with just a couple of disruptors, but most importantly, that air army now being almost fully maxed out in those upgrades. They are fully maxed in the upgrades. Yeah, that is a scary army to break.
3-3 Tempest and carriers. Now, obviously, if the Stalkers get in range of the Tempest, they'll still do all right. But now, if you blink forward, you have to choose, right? Do you kill the carriers? Do you kill the disruptors? You kind of need to always kill the disruptors. And at least Harstem is able to save this base in the top left side. Losing a couple of probes doesn't mean that Harstem is going to be able to get a bigger army. But yeah, SKillous turns around. He's like, man, this has all been going so well. And if that's all you got, as he gets a Nexus kill there, I actually think I can stick around a little bit longer. Needs to make sure he does overstay well. But there we go. Nice snipes on the disruptors. But there is another disruptor showing up.
Yeah, 2 more disruptors showing up, and this one not going to get that, but the stasis drop actually popped. That was tucked into the corner of the mineral line, and Harstem either didn't see it or just forgot about it. Kind of a crazy fight that ends with an even supply for both parties. Both of them taking economic damage, but Harstem taking a lot more because he lost about 30 probes. So I don't know if he's going to be really eager to rebuild those now that he's reduced down to kind of maybe 1.5 base mining, as this Nexus has not been able to go up. This is, I mean, I would not be surprised at all if this really gets low eco, right? Like both of them sub 1,000 minerals, as Harstem has been taking the worst trades lately.
Yep, and at one point, SKillous lost 5,000 resources more than Harstem in this point. At this point, Harstem has lost 4,000 more, but that could very well change after 1 or 2 big Novas. So many cannons and batteries there, though. We do land one nice Nova in the middle of most of the Stalkers of SKillous, and just when SKillous has been winning the majority of the fights, Harstem gets a great connection there. What a lovely PvP between these two. Now, Harstem also has Tempest, and now SKillous is going to go back into a little bit of everything, remaking his Mothership too. Harstem with a crazy blink forward there. That's so crazy. There were multiple... Oh, where did that even come from? I didn't even see it.
Yeah, apparently SKillous didn't either. His shield battery overcharge helping him initially by saving that one disruptor, and then I guess he was afraid of, you know, actually pulling the trigger too quickly, so he didn't pull any trigger whatsoever, but at least getting a little bit of revenge. In terms of Tempest, by the way, Harstem now leads the Tempest count, but I'm not sure that they're all in the front lines, right? And currently, he is forced to retreat, so SKillous getting a little benefit on that air-to-air battle, but so many Stalkers on the ground from Harstem need to be taken seriously. They're going for it. They're actually going to gun for it. One disruptor pops out. It's going to get a fantastic shot by the looks of things, but really, is that going to be enough? SKillous is starting to reinforce his supplies, holding strong, but he's actually less an army supply. The charge lock's coming in. 27.5 minutes into a PvP might actually be what changes the tide of this battle. The disruptors not getting those shots off, the Stalkers forced to retreat, and SKillous, he holds I mean, I think that could have gone way worse for SKillous.
Yeah, it's maybe not totally over yet. Harstem obviously realizing that he has picked off all the disruptors once more. At one point, the Tempest. So Harstem were having a great time against the Tempest of SKillous, but then they also started shooting at Zealots. And I cannot believe that SKillous' Zealot micro there is really what saved him. A couple of balls flying forward, somehow not a single one of them connecting with the Zealots, and he was actively trying to avoid them. And that is what allowed those Zealots to stay alive a bit longer, gave SKillous another warp in, and that meant he was safe, because at one point he was down a tremendous amount in army supply. I mean, this game is just bananas between these two. It's lovely.
Yeah, it's a great PvP. And, you know, there was a point, I think 2 or 3 minutes ago, where I said they both dug into each other's economy, but Harstem's was worse. Well, I'm going to have to take that back. Actually, SKillous, his Nexus is still alive. I guess Harstem was, like, gunning for it and then decided they had to use the Stalkers elsewhere. So, actually, SKillous really didn't take economic damage. He is now dominating the income graph. I mean, really dominating it. So after, you know, leveling the playing field by having that kind of swing on that battle, now we can just say that SKillous straight up ahead. He's got so much more economy, but he is down 30 army supply. That is a little sketch.
Yep, but it's a lot of gateway units at this point, right? Like Harstem has 8 Zealots and 18 Stalkers. So when you're then ahead in army supply, I think it's a little bit deceiving. I think I'd rather take SKillous' army when it's smaller, but those 3 carriers actually make it to the battlefield. Then I think SKillous may have the smaller army, but definitely the more powerful army. There's just too many high-profile units to kill then at that point for Harstem with the Stalkers. Like, what are you gonna kill? The carriers, the DPs, the mothership? Like, a mothership survives forever, as Dark Templars are really going to town on all the static defenses in the top left side. This is not a base that I think Harstem can really afford to lose, but I guess he has to just pick his poison and try to defend the middle instead.
Right, that's the problem. But I mean, while losing one base and saving the other, and also saving your army, hopefully too, would be not acceptable. Losing 2 bases definitely would hurt. So thankfully the DTs, no, there's still so many of them. They just need to go ahead and move over. They will clobber these cannons, clobber the reinforcements. But SKillous is also focusing on the main battle. I think he feels like he does have that stronger army like you've been talking about. He wants to try and utilize it, but he can't quite break it, right? 12 Tempest, 7 Disruptors for Harstem. That's a hard army to break too.
Those Dark Templars are winning the fight that you mentioned. I love the little force field. You could morph 2 Dark Templars or into an Archon. Would break the force field and would give you some more surface area on that cannon. But perhaps that's overcomplicating things when you don't need to, because you can just straight up A-move and get the job done as well. It almost feels like this is going to be an all-in for Harstem, as the shots do not connect this time around. I just feel that SKillous' air army is just a lot bigger. That Mama ship survives, and it's still alive, as Harstem is going to try to switch targets, goes for the carriers instead. But SKillous just has so much. And look at all the Zealots coming in from the top side. That is going to do it. GG, what a sick PvP